Hi, I'm Drew Hutchison. You're tuned to Local Bias. My guest today is a very old friend, and I mean that he's old. And, and I've known him a long time. I think David James, thank you for coming on the show.
Yes,
I think I met you, maybe it was 1977. My dad wanted me to work at the Recorder part-time after school, and you were there.
Right.
And I always thought you were such a gentleman. And I've been a fan of yours ever since. You used to come into H-Copy when I was a printer too, and we did some work for you.
I fooled you.
You fooled me? Oh no, you're not one of those crabby.
No,
not usually.
I have certainly mellowed over the years.
Were you a firebrand when you were younger, going to change the world?
Yes, for a time, but then I kept encountering ways in which my theories did not work.
And you were willing to admit you were wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
That is actually what I've discovered. That's rare. There are a lot of people out there that can never make a mistake. They never have made a mistake. They're right all the time.
Yeah,
it's astonishing.
Yes,
to be so fortunate.
Yes,
but
yes, I remember you when you were a puppy.
Right, I was probably 16 at the time. So,
yes.
But it's always a delight to see you. We've encountered each other over the years, whether it's at the grocery store or wherever, and it's always been a pleasure. And you co-wrote a book with Louise Shattuck that I read. That was about 20 years ago or so. That you
2003.
2003. So yeah, and that's about the history of Lake Pleasant.
Yes.
And Lake Pleasant is coming up on its 150th anniversary. They just had the celebration, or they?
No, it's scheduled for August 24th.
Okay, so
Saturday.
People who, so the way this show works is that sometimes people watch it when it comes out, and sometimes 10 years later it's in repeats. So, or if you're fortunate, it's repeated. If it's a really bad show, it's like, don't show that one again.
Yeah.
But so some people may be watching this after the fact. But the fact is that Lake Pleasant and the Spiritualist Alliance is coming up on this big anniversary.
Yes.
And they've seen better days.
Yes.
But you're saying that there are better days to come.
Yes, and if I can be indulged for a moment.
Please.
At the annual meeting, July 20th of this year, the board of directors for the National Spiritual Alliance voted to close for the winter as of November 1st. And it was to allow the board to explore options about reopening. And if I can read this very short thing. In 1897, Mark Twain is said to have read his own obituary and then remarked, "The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated." In 2024, I, David James, acting CEO, having heard the obituary of the National Spiritual Alliance, mismaking the rounds in many quarters, say this: ditto. The reports of TNSA's death are greatly exaggerated. We are taking this winter off to research options for reopening as a church or community center, with reopening scheduled for about the time when the crocus races the daffodil for first one to bloom.
Oh, okay, so the second week of March.
Or thereabouts, depending on the weather.
Right. Now, with climate change, the crocuses bloom earlier and earlier every year.
Yeah, well then, maybe I was premature with that analogy.
Right. But you are the CEO or the acting CEO?
Yes, right, yes.
What does that mean?
It's essentially the president.
Right.
It's a democratic organization, one person, one vote, so it doesn't entitle you to any kingship or queenship.
And yet you take on that burden.
Well, I've been involved with the National Spiritual Alliance since August of 2000. And so I have a lot invested in it, and the financial circumstances were such that as a result of shrinking membership and shrinking contributions, the organization, if it had gone into the winter, at some point, maybe somewhere in January, we would have run out of money because the winter is the most expensive season. So we decided to hibernate and soul search for possible solutions, and we're going to attempt to keep some of the activities going off-site in either people's homes or rented space. And this is not the first time that traditionally, in probably even beginning in the 80s until about 2000, it closed for the winter and rented space at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Greenfield.
Okay.
So, right.
So this is not out of this has happened before in a way.
Well, yeah. I mean, it certainly hasn't happened.
But the declining membership is still happening. How do you build membership when so many people are turning away from churches in general? The National Alliance Church, so Spiritualist Alliance Church, is a particular church. I mean, it's far different than what a lot of people are accustomed to, because its emphasis seems to be a lot on spirit and communicating with the astral dimension, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure if there's a terminology that you use. Yeah. But is that what makes this church different than a regular Christian church, for instance?
Actually, an angel is no different from, it's another name for a guide.
Okay.
That may exist in the spirit world. Nobody knows what happens after we die.
Right.
And we all are going to die.
Yeah.
So I have chosen, as a result of personal experience, I've chosen the best, the most comfortable scenario for what is next, and that happens to be spiritualism and the concept of two worlds, essentially the earth plane, where imperfected beings exist, and the spirit world, which is a place of, it's sort of built on the school model, where the advancing levels of consciousness and awareness and knowledge, and for the National Spiritual Alliance, it believes in reincarnation.
Right, which was an issue we were talking about at one point with the at Lake Pleasant.
Yes. Yeah. The history of spiritualism in Lake Pleasant is that in along about 1872, Pioneer Valley spiritualists made a deal with the Fitchburg Railroad Company to build a station and essentially turn Lake Pleasant into a religious resort.
Right.
And at first people came and pitched tents.
Right.
And so it was informal.
And multiple groups used that as a recreation area.
Yes, and in the course of 2 additional years, spiritualists had become the predominant group. And in 1874, they informally organized under the name Massachusetts Spiritualists and Liberalists Association. So that is why the 150th anniversary is this year.
Right.
And that group in 1879 incorporated as the New England Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association, and the New England Spiritualist Association existed all by itself until 1913, when the National Spiritual Alliance was created, and it was split off from New England Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association over primarily the views on reincarnation.
Right.
And the National Spiritual Alliance believed in it, and the New England Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association did not. But it was interesting. It wasn't a violent thing, because the same person, Reverend Dr. G. Let's see, I've forgotten. Tabor Thompson was simultaneously president of both organizations from 1913 until 1915, when he died. And what they did was decided to have joint ruling power in Lake Pleasant, and the National Spiritual Alliance got to have its convention and its activities in July, and the New England Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association followed in August.
Right.
So it was largely for many years just a warm weather community.
Okay.
So the village of Lake Pleasant acknowledges 1874 as the birth of the village, even though it was a summer village.
Well, and I looked at a house once, I think on Broadway, and it was just an old cabin or that had been made into a home, but it was leaky and drafty. I mean, it was not meant to be lived in year round. It had been converted, but not well.
Yes.
And I wasn't willing to have a fixer-up of that type. And it seemed like Lake Pleasant was so far away. Now that I drive by Lake Pleasant every week, I just like, it's only 10 minutes away.
Right. Yeah.
But when you're not used to going someplace, it always seems further than it really is.
Yeah. Well, Lake Pleasant is on Lake Pleasant Road, which comes off Millers Falls Road from Turners to Millers Falls, and is the truck route now for Route 63 South.
Right.
So it's a little more heavily traveled now than it was. But I long called it, because the turnoff is called Lake Pleasant Road. And I have long called it the road to nowhere.
Right.
Because you travel for more than a mile surrounded by woods on your left, woods on your right, and then suddenly these small houses where literally people could extend their hands from different houses and shake hands
right.
with their neighbor. And that resulted because they originally the parcels were tent lots,
right?
And
thousands of people too would do this.
Yeah.
Back when it was
right.
tents.
Right.
I couldn't. I mean, this area did not have a huge population. Certainly when the Fitchburg Railroad came through and they had bands greeting you when you get off the train in the morning, and there's concerts and things. I mean, it was an entertainment hotspot.
Right. Yeah.
It was kind of astonishing.
Yeah, it is. In 1872, for example, in a forerunner of the Greenfield Recorder, there was an article.
Is that Courier?
I think it was something like that. And it said it was reporting on the Massachusetts Republican Party convention, which was conducted in Lake Pleasant, and estimated that the crowd was 8,000 to 12,000 people. And now, crowd estimates are notoriously off. The people who are in favor of something swell the figures,
right.
And the people who are opposed to something shrink the figures.
Okay.
But let's say it was on the low end of that. It's the population of the town of Montague now.
Right.
And there was in 1878 there was an English actress turned spiritualist who was a writer, a healer, a medium, and a speaker, and Emma Hardinge Britton was her name, and she traveled around to all the different spiritualist summer camps and reported on them. According to the Boston Banner of Light, which was the longest surviving spiritualist newspaper and also its largest, they estimated that there were 18,000 people there to hear her speak. So you have to discount the numbers, but there's.
I mean, even if it was half that, that's an astonishing amount of people.
Yeah, it is. And in that case, it would be larger than the population of Montague today. So there's it certainly, and it was at that point from the mid 1870s until the stock market crash in 1929, the largest spiritualist gathering place in the nation, and as a result of of Lake Pleasant having first been informally the Massachusetts Spiritualists and Liberalists Association, which incorporated as the New England Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association, and TNSA split off from the New England Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association in 1913, and the New England Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association disbanded in 1976. That leaves TNSA as the sole flag bearer for spiritualism in Lake Pleasant. And it also makes Lake Pleasant the oldest continuously existing, same site, year-round spiritualist center in the United States.
Well, it just shows you how spiritualism itself, which was huge around the turn of the century, well, the turn of the last century, not this century.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
I mean, I think it was because it sounds absurd, but the pace of change was so
Unsettling.
rapid,
Right.
That people were shaken loose from a lot of their moorings, and you know, one of the things that spiritualism, which emerged in the late 1840s, was used as an analogy, was based on, in 1844, Samuel B. Morse sent a message from Baltimore, I think it was Baltimore, Maryland, to Washington, D.C., and the message was, "What hath God wrought?" Mm-hmm. And so spiritualists compare the messages that are received to a spiritual telegraph.
Right.
So you know, again, considering now that revolution succeeds revolution in a very short period of time. I mean, the iPhone was in 2008,
right?
And less than 20 years later,
it's ubiquitous.
Yes. So that kind of rapidity of change was comparable to what was occurring from 1790, when the U.S. was formed at that point, through 1850. There were, the first trains were in 1830s,
right?
And
actually, that's the Fitchburg train had a huge impact on Lake Pleasant.
Oh yeah, right, because it carried them passengers from where they were to there, and it really was a kind of a reaction to urban life, and all of the problems associated with that. And it was an early version of back to the landism.
Right.
The Lake Pleasant is not a large lake.
Right.
And at various times it's had other names like Otter Pond,
right,
for
like
example.
Pond.
Yeah. But it was a pristine water source, and surrounded by pitch pine and scrub oak woods,
right,
which grew down to lake's edges. So that was part of. I mean, there were many allures that caused people to come here.
And the thing is that a big part of Lake Pleasant, from my experience, I used to take classes with Charlotte Gordon. We were talking about that earlier, and they were always pushing. Oh well, this month they're at Lake Pleasant. There's going to be the tarot readings and the palm readings and one of the things I was reading in your book that you and Louise Shattuck wrote, that there was two types of mediums. There was the channels, and
Yeah, there was a physical mediumship. Mental mediumship was mediums contacting directly spirit guides and people who were dead people who were living in the spirit world.
Right.
So obtained from those people messages intended for whoever was receiving the message.
Right.
And so that was called mental mediumship. Then there was physical mediumship, and that involved things like levitation of pianos,
right,
and musical instruments in the air played by unseen hands.
Right.
And that is the one that yielded a lot of fraud.
Right.
Which has
tainted, really.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Certainly, and I'm a fan of the mental mediumship.
Well, I always thought you were mental, David.
Yes. Yes.
But no, I agree. I mean, I have a sense of that working somehow,
right,
because I don't discount anything, but I also know there is a lot of fraud, and it seemed to me like the physical side was ripe for that, because the table knocking or there's ways to, because people are they're credulous. They want to believe. Once you think you believe something, then you confirm that with everything that happens, and it's hard not to see that being, of course it's true. I experienced it.
Right.
But what your own experience with your mother and what my grandpa experienced with his son and other people have, these family stories, how those aren't, that's not some charlatan coming along trying to fleece somebody.
No, or if it is, the charlatan is yourself.
Right. Well, we are capable of fooling ourselves.
Yes, and I try to take all those things into account, but that experience that I had the night that my mother died, and I saw her parents, my father who had preceded her in death, and her brother Merlin, who had died about 23 of polio, and her ancient Aunt Mariah, who had never had her hair cut. They appeared in ovals, thick glass ovals. They were reminiscent, but like ships' portals tend to be round.
Right.
These were ovals, and they those spirits appeared head and shoulders in the ovals, and they were waiting for my mother. And I had been sitting there for hours holding her hand, and there was just the rasping, heaving chest, but otherwise she was comatose. And she pulled her hand out of mine, turned it over, raised it toward the people in the oval things who were waiting for her, is the way I see it. And then it just fluttered down to her belly, and that was her final breath. So while I do not know not so that I would tell anybody else what to believe, but that had such a powerful impact on me, and you can say heightened conditions and all sorts of other ways to explain it away, but maybe one of those is righter than my way, but I am choosing my own best feeling about what happens after death.
Right.
So.
Well, there's the whole bit about what is life, what is our purpose, what is the astral plane or the next dimension. I think there are personally, I think there are like maybe 12 dimensions, and we experience a few of them, and we are actually existing within all the other dimensions simultaneously, but we don't. Within this form, the corporal form, our senses only work with the narrow band that we experience, but it's much more than that. So it's all vibratory, and so you raise your vibration, and everything raises around you in a way because that's where you are.
Yeah,
I'm always curious about how when someone's passing over and they see their loved ones, they typically come and they start, the person that's dying starts experiencing the astral plane more and more, and they start leaving this as they leave this plane. Why do they look the same as they looked, like your aunt with the long hair, or someone that dies when they're 18? They show you that what they looked like when they died. That's not how they actually are in a different dimension. That's how they're representing to the person who's experiencing that.
To let them know who they are.
Right, it's the recognition.
Yes, right.
Because the vibration.
I think that is so.
Yeah, I do too. But I always found that was kind of odd because, well, what if you've passed on, and then you've gone on to other duties? So then you're not going to be there every time that someone passes to be there to greet them, or is time one of those things that all time is now, and when we're in another dimension, we actually know how to skip around and be wherever we need to be? There's so many questions.
Yeah, right. We may be the most intelligent beings on the planet, or
not.
Perhaps, or not. Well, because in some ways we humans are like cancer. They are befouling the world.
That's right. Multiplying out of control.
Yes, denying climate change. They're certainly driven by here and now concerns,
right,
rather than then and there.
Right.
So
how much wisdom that though, for instance, when you're channeling spirit, how do you know that what you're hearing from the spirit is actually wise and true? Because are spirits really advanced over us? Isn't it just a different experience of?
I think it's not instantaneously becoming Einstein.
Right.
It's a matter, but the progress, just like if you continued on the Earth plane and had your faculties sufficiently, then you would learn new things,
right,
and thereby be smarter,
right,
than you were yesterday.
I would hope so.
Yes, so the fact that somebody who's recently died is not much smarter than when they left the Earth
right,
plane. But And these are all theories the first thing is a review of your life,
Right.
So that you can focus on some of the things that you did right and some of the things that you did wrong.
Right.
And so it is, they do become smarter.
Right.
And they attempt to communicate some of that further accumulated wisdom. But there's also the theory that they don't tell you what to do, that they
just give you information that you can use.
Yes, because it's all based on the soul developing.
Right. And actually, that so my own personal and I suppose belief or understanding, because it's, I may be wrong, is that the earth in a way is like a school, and we all have a lesson plan, and you're given the same lesson over and over and over again until you master it. And once you've mastered that lesson, that doesn't come up again. You've already mastered it. Well, then what happens? There's a new lesson.
Yes, yeah, because there's lots of knowledge out there.
Right.
And I mean, if you look around at society at this point, everybody is a specialist, and so they don't know much about the other specialties. Right. And it's probably allowed knowledge in those specialties because of the single-minded focus,
right,
to grow more and wider and deeper in the specialty. But as far as human beings are concerned, like I heard a definition once of a PhD thesis, which was it's a hole 1 inch in diameter, 6 miles deep. And so you want that kind of person to be operating on your brain.
Right, but they might not be a great mechanic.
No, I'm sure that they're not, or reasonably sure.
Right.
But it does seem that there are some things universal. Like I don't, certainly in this life, I am unable to love everyone.
Okay.
But I do attempt to tolerate.
Well, on a certain spiritual level, you could say that as long as you can't love everybody, there's a part of yourself you're not loving. Because aren't we ultimately at the end one? And this whole idea of division is what creates division. Right. There is no true division. Right. And of course, it's easier to say that than it is to actually love someone that you find abhorrent. But I work at it. Yeah. I haven't succeeded. Right. But I think it's something that we need to. That's what we need to evolve to as humans. We need to take the next step forward. Right. And I think that's a lot of what we get from the spirit world. Is like, hey, when are you guys going to grow up? Yeah. Listen to us. Listen to us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, because there are, for example, something like smiling at someone as you pass them. It makes you feel good, right? And it makes the person smiled at, right? Unless you leer, or something like that. But I mean, a benign smile.
That was one of the first homework assignments I had when I studied with May Ristich up at the Renaissance Center in Gill. Yeah, it's like go out and just smile at strangers and then report back.
Yeah.
And little old ladies generally love to be smiled to.
Mm-hmm.
But young juvenile adolescents don't know how to handle it.
Yes, well, selective universal.
Right. So what are the next steps, though, for the Spiritualist Alliance? How are you going to regroup? I mean, I know that's what you intend to do, but do you have some ideas about how you're going to be able to regrow it or rebirth it?
Yes, but we also are just starting to do that, so we certainly at this point want to do sufficient brainstorming before picking out some things. I mean, the biggest thing is that there are many people in the town of Montague who have no idea where Lake Pleasant is.
Right.
So one of the things is to communicate and make people more aware.
Okay. Well, and that's one reason you're here.
Yes. Yes. That's true. Although I do like to see you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
So the more people who are aware of you, it's not that they all are going to want to be involved, but even if you take a percentage, let's say take a low percentage, 5%, the larger the field is, 5%.
That's marketing. Well, really, I mean, if you knock on 100 doors and you get 2 people to respond, that's 2 more people than you would have had if you hadn't knocked on those doors.
Yeah.
And so you're knocking on a lot of doors right now.
Yeah, and employing social media in a more advanced stage than what we've been able to do at this point. So I feel confident that we will be able to swell the numbers, and it's all based on attendance at events.
Right.
I mean, the whole financial structure. So the more people you have attending events, the healthier you are.
Well, traditionally, what I mean, or at least from my experience, it was once a month there was a gathering of where they would have the different mediums.
Yes, the last Saturday of every month is medium psychic fair.
Right.
And so from 11 to 4, although in the winter sometimes it would get canceled because of weather.
Right.
But there is some form of Sunday service every Sunday, and there are psychic development circles that meet once a week on Mondays.
So they actually teach you how to be more psychic?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, what are some of the practices that help people develop their psychic abilities?
One of the things is to limitedly trust intuition, because a lot of children are natural psychics.
Right.
And that is not something that's culturally...
It's disencouraged.
Yes, right. So it's kind of picking up where it left off, and
it's almost like listening to yourself. because you have, it's almost, well, cats have whiskers.
Right.
And they can sense so many vibrations with those whiskers. We can't even comprehend how they do it because we don't have the whiskers that work that way.
Right.
Well, psychic ability is kind of like that. Until you experience it, it's easy to discount it. But when you experience it, it's even then, it's kind of ineffable. It's like, well, did I really experience that? Because it's so, well, ephemeral in a way, or gossamer-like. It's not tangible. It's just I have a gut instinct.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, David, I choose to go to the grocery store based upon, should I go now? No. 10 minutes later, it's time to go. And that's when I run into you. Or I run into somebody else that I wouldn't have seen if I'd gone 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah, right.
Or I'm going to go, I'm driving, I have multiple ways to go, which way should I go? And I'll ask, I kind of listen to myself, says, I'm going to go this way today. And I find out, I avoided an accident over there. So
Right.
I don't know how much of that is just coincidence, but it doesn't seem to be. I mean, to me, it seems kind of tangible because I actually did take psychic development. And I think it's natural.
Right.
But we have dumbed it, in a way, it's almost as if we've all gone around blind on purpose. Oh, I don't believe in eyesight. And yet we are capable of seeing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And part of it is seeing what you can get for someone else, and then they either recognize it,
Right.
or and acknowledge it, or they don't. So it's a learning process where you're trying out different ways of communicating.
Well, and that's why I think it's interesting. But I used to do tarot and the Yi Jing, and in a way, you're taking something that's unrelated, it's random. You're putting the cards out there. They're all shuffled and everything. It's not like there's some divine, we're picking this card, we're picking that card. And yet when you throw them all down and start forming a narrative, the person on the other side is like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Now, how much of that is that we have so many commonalities that our stories are very similar? There's only so many narrative arcs.
Right.
But how much is it also touching something that, well, I didn't want to address that issue, but now it's in my face, I have to face it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to know.
Yes, and therein lies the art of life.
Right. It's hard to know, and so you just live.
But I mean, there are certainly ways of better living.
Yes.
And it has to do with things like the Golden Rule,
right?
Which is virtually universal in all ages, all eras, all continents, all cultures.
It's like 2 + 2 = 4. If you treat people the way you wish to be treated, the chances are you're not going to foment something that's going to cause you harm.
Right.
And yet that seems like we've gotten away from that in our culture because our culture is driven by spectacle. People want to be distracted, they want to be entertained. And what distracts us? A car wreck, bad news, something that's going on over there. I mean, people that watch a lot of television, let's say they watch crime dramas, they think there's far more crime than there really is because they're receiving this information via the TV, and then they start to believe that, and then there's confirmation bias where everything they see, there's... I was reading on Law and Order that this awful thing happened.
Yeah.
It's 1 out of 300 million people did that thing, but because that made the news, that's what you think is real.
Yeah.
And it's actually a fraction of what is real.
Right. Well, I guess you have to make your own news.
Well, your life is making your own news, right?
Yes. Your life is your autobiography.
Very well said. And actually, one of the things I appreciate about, you're talking about how you have the specialists that are so, narrow focused, but they go very deep in one subject. You're a journalist. And a journalist, by their very nature, knows a little bit about a lot.
Yeah. Jackass
of all trades is something I like to say. But
yes. Right. So, sometimes, I mean, we all have our better and our lesser moments.
Right.
But I think it's extremely important to try to do the best that you can with every thing that you think or say or do, being aware that sometimes your best will be better than other times, depending on you and your circumstances,
Right.
and others you interact with and their circumstances. But if the best that can be done is what is done, then, how can you do better than that?
Right. You've done what you can.
Yeah, right.
And we don't always know the outcome. It's not always black and white. It's not always clear.
No.
So that's actually, once again, having kind of an intuition. What is this for my highest good? Is this for the highest good of the community? What is the real motivation behind this? Am I looking to gain something just for myself? Because we're influenced by so many things. We have our own innate needs. I mean, our DNA, what is our DNA interested in? It just wants to procreate, wants to pass on its DNA.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Yes.
okay, that's the physical job. But there's a spiritual side. What does the spirit want? And, well, we don't always know, do we?
No.
If someone was interested in the Spiritualist Alliance, is there a way for them to get in touch with you?
Yes. There's a website and a Facebook page. The website is Spiritual Alliance USA, and it will come up first in your browser. So that has a lot of information about the organization, as well as calendar of events. So I did want, even though some people will see this after the psychic fair,
Right.
or I mean the
Celebration.
150th anniversary celebration is. It is Saturday, August 24th, 2024, from 1 to 9 p.m., and for a full schedule of festivities, you can access lakepleasant.net, and there's no space between lake and pleasant.
Okay. Well, we'll put that out there because we've reached the end of the episode. It goes by so fast, but I'm interested in coming out and being there. Lake Pleasant is a beautiful short drive.
Right.
Even if people in Montague don't know where it is, and I encourage people to get out there and see for themselves because it is kind of a jewel, and it's certainly a different way of looking at the world than a lot of people are accustomed. And I think that can be beneficial regardless of if you get involved, just to know there's other ways of looking at life and experiencing it. So David, thank you so much for coming on Local Bias.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And if you just stay in touch, because if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate.
I'll remember that.
All right, very good. I'm Drew Hutchison. You've been tuned to Local Bias. My guest has been David James, who is the CEO of the Lake Pleasant. What's the name again? The Lake Pleasant Spiritualist Alliance?
The National Spiritual Alliance.
The National Spiritual. I mess these things up all the time. You've been watching. You know what we're talking about. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy.